Hey guys, how you going? This is BillyEatWorld again, and today I'm back with yet another video looking at the history of Battlefield games. And in this episode, we're going to take a look at arguably the best and most influential game in the series, Battlefield 2. This game only came out 3 years after BF 1942, which, as you might remember from the last episode, I said was pretty much a masterpiece. So what is it that DICE managed to change in just a few short years that made BF2 even better? Well, that's what we're going to find out. Now, just to give you a bit of perspective on BF2, well, back in 2005 it was released into what was still the Arena and World War II shooter era. For example, at the top of the pile, Medal of Honor was already well established, and the first Call of Duty as well as Halo 2 had only just come out a year earlier. I mean, sure, Counter-Strike was a thing back then, but except for maybe Operation Flashpoint, no one else was really trying to push the realistic modern-day shooter theme. And you've got to remember, this was 2 years before Modern Warfare, which arguably may not have even happened if Battlefield didn't reinvent the genre. Like I just said though, unlike these other games, you can tell back then Battlefield was trying to be a realistic FPS game, focused more on team play and tactics rather than KD. And so as a result, it introduced quite a few features that have been in every Battlefield game ever since, like the squad system and the commo rows. I mean, back then you could only spawn on your squad leader and not everyone, but the game did give you a much better framework to help you work with your team. And as I'll point out later on in the video, this was a huge deal because in a lot of other ways the game made it a lot harder to play as a lone wolf. One of the other interesting things you'll notice about BF2, especially if you're used to modern Battlefield games, is how the weapons handle, because although there isn't a lot of visible recoil, you'll notice straight away, with a lot of guns it's sometimes hard to hit the side of a barn. I mean, the LMGs, for example, are so inaccurate that you literally have to go prone or at least crouch to have a hope of hitting anything. And that makes the game a whole lot less of a run and gun fest compared to more recent games, and it really does make you play each kit differently. The other things that make you slow down a little bit more in BF2 is the fact that the game doesn't have regenerating health, it's got a stamina bar, and also the fact that you can't strafe while you run. And so unlike in pretty much every Battlefield game since Bad Company, you won't just be able to sprint around forever, and especially not out in the open. I mean, compared to proper tactical shooters like Arma, BF2 isn't anywhere near as tough when it comes to stuff like this, but compared to modern games, it's like night and day, and you'll find that you really have to think a lot more rather than trying to rely on just twitch reflexes. Now, just a quick point on map design. Well, as you can see in this gameplay, Battlefield 2, just like 1942, is focused around what we know today as Conquest. But once again, you can tell DICE was pretty smart about how they design the maps, and if you read the descriptions, you can often see the names of more modern game modes we know today. Probably the main improvement from 1942 in this game though, is that there seems to be a much bigger focus on urban style CQB maps. And not just that, you can even see them start to bring verticality into the map design, like for example with ladders that let you go up to rooftops and towers. Probably the biggest Battlefield staple that isn't in BF2 though is destruction, which really didn't start being added until the Bad Company era. And as insignificant as that probably sounds, it really does date the game a fair bit, and you can tell it's gonna have to be a pretty key feature of the franchise going forward. With that being said though, apart from that, the graphics and visual design aren't actually that bad, and unlike most old games, you can even get it to run in 1080p. But at the end of the day, I don't even think that really matters, because it's still a great game despite how it looks, which you can't really say about a lot of more recent FPS games that have come out in the last few years. But finally, probably the most impactful long-term difference between BF2 and more recent Battlefield games is mod support. And sure, 1942 did support mods as well, but the reason I think BF2 really shines on this point instead is because overall it's a much more capable platform. In fact, if you do a quick search on a site like ModDB, you can see there's about 5 times more mods available for BF2 than 1942. And most importantly, you'll find at the top of that list is Battlefield 2 Project Reality, which is still one of the most popular tactical shooters of all time. In saying all of that though, this series is about looking back at the older games to help DICE improve the newer games in the future, and I think mod support is probably a lost cause. And that's because BF2 was one of the last PC exclusive games in the series, and historically modders just aren't able to put out mods for console games for a number of different reasons. Also, you've got to remember that when BF2 came out, most games were still sold as physical copies, and so were the expansions. And nowadays, well into the era of DLC, when publishers can make a ton of cash off selling new content, they're hardly going to want modders to give it away for free. But anyway guys, I think that just about wraps up this video, so I hope you got a good insight into Battlefield 2 and how it could possibly influence Battlefield games in the future. Before you go though, do me a favour and let me know what you like the most about BF2 and tell me what you think. Is it the best Battlefield game ever, or is there another one that you like best? As always though, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and let me know about anything you like in the comment section below. But most importantly, stay tuned for more Battlefield videos on this channel, and until then, see you later and have a good one.